We are going to have fun today. This is the red pill speed run. I'm going through all of the red pills. You're going to get all of it. Condensed, short, sweet, so that whether you've been red pilled or not, you're going to get something out of it. If you haven't been red pilled, if you don't even know what a red pill is and you're here, you're going to get red pilled. If you've already been red pilled, this is going to be like put in your back pocket. This is going to be like your short and sweet book, like 2-page notes. Boom, 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 point to point to point. That way you can red pill all your friends. We can wake everybody up because let's be honest, everybody needs it at this point. We got to get the whole world red pilled, if that's what you want to call it, whatever you want to call it. The woke right, is that what we are? This is the right wing. That's what we're going to call this. I'm Jarrod Wright. This is the right wing. Let's get into it.
The right wing has been excellent. Jarrod Wright, Christian nationalist influencer.
So if we're going to do a red pill speed run, if we're going to break it all down quickly, you got to understand what being red pilled even means at this point. Ultimately, what the red pill comes down to, it's a play on words. It's kind of like a play on movies when it comes to the Matrix, because it's just like that. You know, at the point in the Matrix, you got the guy hands him, he's like, do you want the red pill and you want to wake up, or do you want the blue pill and you forget about everything I've said? Well, you take the red pill. You want to wake up. And the thing about the red pill is you can't go back. And the red pill and modern politics and modern theology, all of it right now, has to do with the modern nation state of Israel, if you want to call them that even. That's what this has to do with. It's a play on words. Once you see the truth, you never go back. You do not go back to your past ways, your false ways. It's just not possible. Once you take that red pill, you put it down, you gulp it, you're here. You're woke up. It's almost always to do with Israel, with the Jewish people, what they've done throughout society, certain people who maybe were considered bad and were really good, certain people who were assassinated. It's a long history, and that's why we're going to break it down. So maybe you already don't like Israel. Maybe you're already on the right footsteps. We're going to break the whole thing down. So where do we begin? How do we start out the red pill process? The best place to start is with Jesus. I mean, the best place to start is at the beginning, because that's where this all really begins at. Yes, the Jews killed Jesus at the very beginning. They actually told Pontius Pilate, put the blame on us. We want the blame. We're killing him. We're voting for it. Pontius Pilate washes his hands clean. He says, I'm not a part of this. This is all y'all. And they said, this is on us and our ancestors forever, the blood of Jesus. And they killed him, which is where our religion started. It's where Christianity started at, is the fact that the Jews killed Jesus. So what happens after that? Well, Christianity obviously starts. We have the whole religion that's created. And that whole time frame, those Christians spoke out against the Jewish people as being, you know, heretical Pharisees and Sadducees, which is what Jesus said. He literally takes a whip and beats them out of the temple for doing evil things within the temple and selling things and basically turning it into a den of thieves. You know, he did not like what they were doing. So the disciples, the apostles, they continue this train of thought. And they're like, man, the Jewish people at the time are not going to be who we want them to be. This is not, they have to turn to Christ is what they have to do. That's kind of where the red pill began at, if we're being honest here. And so it just continues over time. And over the course of the next, let's just break it down to like 1900 years. I mean, it was a continuous trend of these Jewish people, if you can even call them that, essentially doing evil things. They were money hungry. They would go to a country, try to take control, get kicked out of the country, right? Even before Jesus, they were doing evil things. They weren't actually following the law like they said they were. They were just evil people. They would turn their back on God. Jesus completely changed who God was to them. He says, if you don't follow Jesus, you cannot have the Father. You can't deny the Son and have the Father. So they have to worship a false God. That's 1 John 2:23. And this continues. But thousands of times they got kicked out of nations, 109 specific nations, thousands of times, over and over and over. Christopher Columbus was more than likely of that religion and ethnicity. That's why he got kicked out from Spain and he came across looking for something different. That kind of all connects in with it. It's all there, right? It's all there. The stage has been set. And then what you have is you work your way all the way into the 1900s, and this is where it really starts to just go crazy for us, the last 100 years or so. Because what you see is you see Russia. And Russia begins to be completely overrun by, these people. They take over the government. They, completely institute what they want, central banking, the coin clippers, they cutting off the hedges. They want to control the money. That's where it's always at, follow the money. And so they run the banks is what they typically do. They love to charge interest, not to each other, not to people of their same ethnicity, but to each other, or to us. They screw us. That's what happens. And that's what happens in Russia. And eventually they're like, hey, we're going to starve out all the Christians because they hate us Christians. Their Talmudic teachings tells them that Jesus is burning in hell in human poop, that he's a false god, that Christians are disgusting, spit on them, they're awful, which is, a whole other thing. But at this point, they don't have a homeland per se. They don't have somewhere to go. And a lot of these people are not even of original descent from the original Jewish line. The word Jew comes from the tribe of Judah. That's where we got the word at. It wasn't even really used up until after Jesus. Before, they were just been called like God's people or Israelites, sometimes maybe the Hebrews in a lot of ways. So this is really a New Age word just in general to describe them. And these particular ones and the ones that are in Israel today aren't even connected to that bloodline. They are not Semites is what you would call them. They're not from Shem, the son of Noah. They are a completely different breed from Poland, from Eastern Europe, from Russia. They're Ashkenazi. That would be the word to describe them. They come from that side, and they have no claim to the land. But they were in Russia at the time. They take over the government. What you see around 40 million Christians who get killed in the Holodomor. And this is going on, within like the 1910s and the 1920s and such. Kind of that World War I and right after period. You get the Bolshevik Revolution. There's a lot of history behind that. And then you move into Germany where, supposedly some pretty crazy things happened. Well, you have to wonder what was happening. And I made a whole video breaking down Weimar Germany, what was going on. But, basic terms is what they did in Russia, they began trying to do in Germany. Germany had to take the blame for all of World War I. I mean, that's essentially what happened. They just got hit with everything. All of World War I, they took the blame for. So a prideful nation turns into a hurt, broke nation, really. These people rise to power, and they began pushing things that are traditional within their Talmudic Judaism or Rabbinic Judaism, not traditional like coming from the Old Testament, but rather extra writings within their faith. And they start pushing pornography, transgenderism. This is where transgenderism was founded at. You have a guy named Magnus Hirschfeld in Germany, and he operates and runs the College of Sexology. This College of Sexology performs the first transgender study. This is where like all of the studies were done with the gays and stuff. Like this is where all of that began. It's a real detriment to society. Obviously, homosexuality had been here for a long time, all the way back to, even Sodom and Gomorrah and probably before. But this was a hotspot for it. And it really degraded society. You have hyperinflation going on. These particular people are in the government. They're running the banks, are charging absurd amounts of interest. They're trying to destroy society. And that way they can make more money. That's what really happens. If they're controlling the banks, no matter what, they make money because they're going to be charging the correct amount of interest on it. So they're charging the interest. They're running the government. I think it's like a 60% ran by these people type thing at that point in time. And you get an uprising because people saw what happened in Russia and they're like, I don't want that to happen to my nation. The German people are like, this is detrimental. This is not what should be happening. We see what happens over here. This isn't good. I don't want that to happen to Germany. And so they rise up and they actually burn the books. Now, which books did they burn? In school, you were taught they burnt the books of knowledge, the textbooks. No, they went to Magnus Hirschfeld's School of Sexology, College of Sexology, and took all of his transgender gay study books and threw them and burnt them. They said, no more degeneracy, no more sodomy in our nation. We don't want that. We're burning these books. Well, guess who that made angry? The people behind it all. And at the same time, a particular man, whom you know his name, but I probably can't speak it if I want to remain on YouTube, begins to rise to power. He's kind of behind a lot of these things. And what he's pushing is for a prideful version of Germany, where you're proud of the nation that you're in. That's what he pushes for. And so he was kind of behind some of the book burnings. He takes these big bankers, which was the Rothschilds, and pulls them out and says, you're not doing this anymore. Actually arrest them, turns them into janitors and stuff. And so what happens is, like, Jews worldwide declare war on Germany. There's newspaper articles. It's like Judea declares war on Germany. It's like Judea didn't exist, or even Israel. Any of that. That wasn't a thing then. This is the 30s. This is before 1948. Worldwide Jewry declares war on Germany. The Jews worldwide actually declared this on him. Well, the Jews were actually big friends with Britain because they'd interbreeded with Britain. While Britain was in great debt, and same with the United States for this matter, the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers actually bailed them out of debt. In exchange, they say, we want to interbreed into the royal family. We want to interbreed so that we have our fingers in a lot of different things. And what ends up happening is that's how you get the nation of Israel eventually established, and why Britain was such a big proponent of it is because of the interbreeding that had happened, the Rothschilds' influence on the royal family and such that had happened before. So that's kind of all happening behind the scenes. You see Britain actually declaring war and bombing Germany at the time, whereas that leader is like, I don't want war, guys. I don't want to go to war. I want my nation. I want my borders. I want a strong group of people. He's pushing for great things, really, for society, for lots of kids and such, growing the Germanic people, making them proud again. And he gets the greatest economy boom in all like ever, period, while the rest of the world is essentially going through depression, which is pretty wild. That's a crazy statistic, honestly. So he's doing great, and the Germanic people loved him. They loved him because of this and what he was doing, and he just wanted to deport them out of his nation for the most part. Now, what happens after 1939, whether or not they go to these camps and such, I'll leave that to you to figure out. A lot of people don't believe so. I'll put it that way. They believe it was what the Red Cross number said, which was 271,000 dying from typhus and things like that, and not a full 6 million dying from a genocide. You can figure that one out. There's lots of stuff all about it. That's just that one in particular. So once he loses the war, because America was pulled into the war, there's a whole long story behind that we're not going to get into. Once he loses the war, is declared the bad guy, people say, well, we have to do something. And specifically, Britain is like, we need to give these people a nation. That's what would be good. Britain ran by these people, like influenced by these people. It's like, we need to just give them their land back. So what happens is the Jews around the world all of a sudden get this strip of land that's, now called Israel, was historically called Israel. It was called Palestine at the time. And they just go in and are like, hey, knock, knock, knock. I know you live here, but God promised this to me. So get out. That's what happened. Imagine if someone did that to your house. Imagine if a Native American came knocking and said, hey, by the way, my million gods promised this to me. Get out. You'd say, no, like we're here for a reason. And that's exactly what happened. And the Palestinian people were pissed. Obviously so. That's not freedom. That's not fair. They worked for it. They bought it. Jewish people said, get out. They just made their own land. And they continually grew and grew and grew and grew and took over more land until they essentially ran the entire area today. They still are. And they're just genociding people. And that's a quick fast forward into it. So then you say, well, what happens next in this story? We're kind of going throughout history. What happens next? Well, even before that, you can look back into America. That's one of the big reasons. If you go backwards just a little bit and you look at American inflation, while we are Weimar 2.0, what you have is the Federal Reserve created in 1913. Immediately before that was the sinking of the Titanic, in which almost every single person who opposed a Federal Reserve ran by a specifically Jewish family died, which is, kind of a conspiracy per se, but the Federal Reserve is instituted, ran by a famous Jewish banking clan. We have a central bank now ran by the same people running all the central banks so they can charge us interest, but not their own family and friends, not their own people. They're not going to do that. They know it's detrimental to them. So the Federal Reserve happens, which begins an inflationary rise. And then you fast forward to JFK. JFK is an interesting case. Everyone knows he was assassinated. Pretty wild story. A lot of people have conspiracies about it, but here's what we know. JFK was assassinated by the nation of Israel on a combo effort from the CIA and Mossad. That's where this comes from. Even in the uncovered papers, guess what word is consistently marked out, but people have figured out what it is? It's Israel. It was Israel being involved in it. Well, why would they be involved in it? Because JFK, in the weeks coming up to his assassination, spoke out against three things. The first one being he did not want Israel to have nuclear weapons. He said, no one in the Middle East should have it. It's us, it's Russia. That's it. We're not letting them have it. That's not fair to anybody else. If we're not going to let anybody else have it, why would they get it? He spoke out against that. That's number one. That still plays a role today, by the way. Literally, the war in Iran today is over essentially the same exact issue that was happening, 60 years ago. But number two was the predecessor to AIPAC. He says, I want you to register as a foreign lobby. Like, I understand you are American Jewish people who are lobbying, but you're lobbying on behalf of Israel because that's where your true alliance is. He said that should be a foreign lobby. You should have to register, in which you have a lot of rights and restricted essentially as far as the lobbying goes. And you just get a lot of things cut down. Like, you can't do as much, you can't give as much, you can't say as much, you can't be at as many places because you're a foreign interest. They did not like that. They still don't like that. AIPAC's still a domestic interest. And finally, the third thing is he wanted to stay on the gold standard. Staying on the gold standard completely limited what the bank could do. The bank ran by these people. So if the bank is limited in how much money they can essentially charge you and then in turn make themselves, because this is a privately owned bank, then they're not going to be very happy. But once you pull it off the gold standard, once you take the one thing that holds finite value from the dollar, they can take inflation through the roof. He's assassinated. Guess what happens? We come off the gold standard and none of the other things happen. They get into nuclear weapons. Inflation goes through the roof. You can look at graphs. Right about 1913, there's an inflationary rise. Right about 1965 or so, huge inflationary rise, all the way up through today, where the economy gets worse and worse and worse and worse, just less affordable than ever for us. Matter of fact, if you look at the Great Depression, it's actually twice as hard to buy a house right now by income to median house price than it was during the Great Depression. That's how crazy inflation has gotten. If you followed the gold standard from then, the median income right now, the minimum wage right now will be something like $60, $70 an hour. But no, that's not going to happen because they can't make money off that. They can't get cheap labor off of that. So you just keep on fast forwarding. We start fighting their wars within the 80s, within the father of George Bush, not the son. You start getting this fighting their wars for this nation of Israel, whom we blindly support for some reason. I wonder why. You work your way up into 9/11. You go, 9/11's interesting. Something happened there. It seems kind of an odd thing. These buildings collapse. It looks like controlled demolition. What's the deal? How did that happen? And then you find out that Osama bin Laden was a CIA Mossad agent beforehand under a completely different name, got pinned for everything, and he never even admitted to doing it. You don't think a proud Muslim terrorist would be absolutely saying, yeah, we did that? No, he was like, we didn't do that. It's like, he probably said, man, they did a good job, whoever it was. Obviously I don't agree with that, but that's probably what he said. But he said, I didn't do this. He wasn't taking the blame for it. What really happened was Israel needed a method to pull us into war with Iraq and with Afghanistan. These are their enemies. And now Iran. We're seeing 9/11 2.0 happen, like literally right before our face, with all of this war on terror and everything else, the never-ending war. Guess who's behind the wars? It's the people who make profit off the wars. I've made videos on this. Who makes profit off the wars? Well, it's the people who own the defense industries, which are these particular people over and over and over. This is, an interesting point. And when you look at 9/11, it was obviously a controlled demolition. There was bombs within it. You look at all the different attacks. There's too many things that don't happen. Like, how did the passport fall from the plane down below and never burnt up? It doesn't make any sense of how, 10 stories of building collapsed another 100 stories below it. The law of physics doesn't add up. 10 stories can only collapse 10 stories. So there's a lot that goes behind that of why it was a controlled demolition and who was behind it. And then immediately we go to war on behalf of these people. We spend our money. We spend our soldiers' lives at war for these people. And you just keep fast forwarding it throughout time and you see their influence over everything. You see how AIPAC runs today, where they influence almost every single politician that we have. You see things like Epstein, who was a Mossad agent, who was blackmailing our politicians, our big names, so that he had power over them, power for the Israeli government to use and to blackmail and to say things to whenever you have a politician on video with a child. That's a lot of blackmail you can use. They don't want that released. This works all the way through. Even Epstein's girlfriend, her dad, Robert Maxwell, owns the textbooks in which our kids learn from in public schools that were implemented by the Rockefellers, who were essentially a Jewish family. Robert Maxwell owned McGraw-Hill. So let me ask you a question. Who writes history? Is it the ones who lose history, or is it the one who wins history? History is always going to be propagandized. Is it not a magic miracle that the good guys have won every single war throughout all of history? Or at least who you're told the good guys are? Is that not an interesting thing to wrap your mind around? Did the good guys really win every single time? Because our history books tend to say it like that, and guess who was behind it? Somebody directly tied with Israel, directly tied with Mossad, directly tied with Jeffrey Epstein. He owned the textbooks, along with his friends and such, therefore. So then you ask yourself, have I been told the correct history? Have I been told what really happened, or I've just been told who's the bad guy and who's the good guy, and I ran with it. And then you see the Israeli genocide that's happening, and this has been publicly, worldly declared a genocide, and you go, I don't like what these people are doing. And another issue is where you say, well, it's an Israeli issue. It's not a worldwide Jewry issue. Well, 90% of worldwide Jews support what's going on there. They support the nation state of Israel. They are Zionists. So if 90% of a people group agree with something, I'm just going to label them what they are. I'm not going to try to, get a special word for them. That's why I say the J word quite often. It gets me in trouble. That gets censored a lot. So, it's fun. And so then you wake up to the whole worldwide problem, and it comes back to this group of people. If it was just an Israeli problem, they wouldn't have been kicked out of 109 countries over 1,000 times. But they did across, a long period of time. If it wasn't, if it was an Israeli issue and not a J-word issue, these things before 1948 wouldn't have mattered. But it's always been a J-word issue. It's the same people group over and over and over, running the banks, trying to run the government, influencing the government, and screwing you so they can make money. It's time we wake up to that biblically, politically, like all across all things. It's okay to say these are not God's chosen people, though they say they are. I'm not giving them land that they have no inheritance to because they're not even from there, and I'm not going to bow down to them. And I've woke up to all of their issues. And that, my friend, is the red pill. Welcome. I'm happy you took it. You gulped it down. You took you some water, knocked it back. You've been red pilled. You cannot deny it. You can't go back to sleep. You are woke up. You're part of the woke right now, per se, if you want to be. Whatever you want to call it. I like red pill. That's the quick and easy one. It still went pretty long. We still went 20 minutes. I mean, there's a lot to it. And really, there's so many things in between. That was the quick version. Like that was the quick version. Imagine if we sat down and really broke down each of these things detailed, right? It would take a long time. But that's what happens when you study. That's what happens when you go on Instagram Reels. That's your study time. If you're red-pilled, whether just now or before, I think you're going to like my channel. I'm Jarrod Wright. This is the Wright Wing. Hit the buttons down below. Subscribe, follow, turn the notification bell on so you know when I post a new video. It's not that hard. Follow the other socials, get in my direct communication group. Do all the things because I appreciate you. And I hope you have a great day.